And then open up the floor and just pop your hand up and on. Pete, where did you first get the idea for Room?
From the movie Cube. I mentioned it in one of the first lines of the play. Who's seen the movie Cube? A few of you. For the benefit of those who didn't pick up what that was about, it's very, very similar premise. 5 people wake up in a room and they can go into different rooms, but the major difference is some of these rooms have traps which actually end up killing the people in the cube. So they go through a similar journey in terms of wondering what's going on and all the questions that they're asking, but they're at high risk of fatalities due to poison gas or blades coming down to cut them into lots of little pieces. I got the idea, I like the premise of that, and I like the idea of putting that onto stage, converting it into the theatre medium and exploring what could possibly happen with a very similar situation, putting a group of people just in a room together. They're stuck in a room. What would happen?
Okay, second question. Being aware that a couple of the actors are in the audience, how do you feel seeing it?
Honestly. With performances like today, I feel amazing seeing it on stage. I'd just like to propose a big up to Brendan and Louise. Is anyone else from the show? Yeah, they just did a fantastic job tonight, so well done, guys.
All right, time for questions. Any questions?
I have one. The way you develop the story is actually quite optimistic when you look at it. I mean, these people could have ended up hating each other and, you know, keep having brawls at each other the whole way through. But in the end, you basically made them become really good friends and helpful and supportive from each other. Is that something you intended to put out? Is that part of what you thought would be the message of it, or is it just
it's certainly not the moral message that I was trying to give. If I intended it from the beginning, it's hard to answer that question. Basically, when I thought of the idea, I just had the premise, the 5 people in the room, and the idea that in the second act we'd come back in and time had passed and they had gone deep into little fantasy games. So I didn't set out to write it with that positive slant. However, I did very intentionally set out to put 5 people in that room who were all fundamentally decent people. So if you've seen similar movies or read books with a similar premise to Room, you'd often find that the author is immediately putting in a very different dynamic of character into those situations. So in the movie Cube, for example, one of the guys was pretty much evil from the beginning. He was the dark horse, the guy who was always going to become aggressive and do something pretty extreme, whereas I like the idea of seeing what would happen putting 5 decent people in that room together.
You did put a guy just out of jail in the end, eventually, so then you took him out.
Yeah.
Next question.
I'd just like to say that I really like the way, it surprised me the way the second act started, because I thought the second act would just be a continuation of the first act. And so I wasn't expecting that there would be, you know, a real development that had happened in the interim. I mean, I thought the whole play was full of surprises, but I particularly enjoyed that coming in, and it just seemed like it was a fresh play, almost, because the characters had changed, the situation had changed so much.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And again, with the premise that I use in Room, having the 5 people all stuck together in a room, there's a lot that just has to happen. So the questions that they're going to ask, the discovery, the process that they go through trying to work out why they're there and what to do and what do we do when we need to go to the toilet, that's all, these questions are really going to have to happen if anyone wrote that play. But I wanted to ask the questions that, I wanted to take a different angle and think of how can I make this beyond just those questions that everyone would ask in the situation. So I came up with the idea that their coping mechanism was basically to pretend that they weren't in the room, to go into their own little fantasy worlds and use that as their escape mechanism. And so it allowed me to go 6 months into the future where they've gone really deep into that and just give the audience a bit of a glimpse, enough for them to see, okay, so this is what's happened. We've got Abby who's now pregnant. These guys are all just farting around basically with their time trying to have fun. And then throwing in that new dynamic with Mitch coming in there and changing everything up.
Another question over here.
Yeah, I've almost got two, but I'll do one for a start. So, the descent into the fantasy world, is that saying that we all play roles in life to cope with life?
What do you think, David?
I think we do in a way. Not necessarily to cope with life, but we often lead roles, we have work roles, and, and maybe perhaps a bit more ourselves at home. Sometimes we have roles in life, and maybe that's a way that we stay sane in the same way that they were staying sane by descending into roles in this fantasy world.
Yeah, it's a very very reasonable interpretation. To be honest, I didn't set out to make any big moral message with the play. I wanted to leave it very open, like with the storyline. The fact that at the end, Matt is basically erased and comes back into the room afresh as a new character, and the implication in the line, you've seen this work before with your own eyes, the implication that perhaps they've actually been in the room for a lot longer. I don't have an answer to those questions. What you saw on stage, the words that came out of the actor's mouths, that's all that's been written. So everything else, my guess is as good as yours. In terms of any moral message, again, I didn't want to be preachy. I didn't set out to say, hey, this is what happens, humanity, rah, rah, rah. I just wanted to explore the situation and raise a lot of questions and a lot of issues and let people make up their own mind.
I was about to say, I'd like to just quickly say that I can guarantee you there's been hours of debate amongst the cast. Exactly how long they've been there and what they're doing.
I was going to ask the writer if you thought that the actors had given the moral dimension or the director, or was it basically there?
Very good question. In fact, Alison, the director, and the cast have brought a lot more into that play than is in the script. The script is very bare. It doesn't really try to dictate any of that stuff. There's very little stage direction, so you can see that during that play on stage, 5 of the actors who are there for most of the play, they're doing something for the entire 90 minutes. They're always performing. But in the script, there's very little stage direction telling them what they should be doing. So that's something that Alison, as the director, was kind of spearheading, and the actors obviously came up with a lot of their own stuff. On a more specific level, that's the same with their characterisation. The characters in the script are really quite bare. They basically just have the words to work with. I didn't write a lot of detail into their personalities. Say in a lot of plays, you'll see a character page at the front which details what kind of people they are. It will describe their age, gender, their look, their temperament, things like that. It basically just has one sentence saying, Dave is a 40-year-old lawyer. That's basically all it said. So, I mean, a lot of the dimension that you see there is really come out through the performance side of things. And I think a great example is the scene where Mitch comes along and Mitch grabs Matt, Mitch the convict. He grabs Matt and holds him around the neck, and there's one point where he takes Abby and starts playing with her belly and singing. None of that's actually in the script. Alison and the guys have come up with that. And also a fight choreographer or a movement choreographer who came in and worked on the piece as well. Has basically added all of that.
Can I just ask about that? Sorry.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
I've also got a hand up over there.
The man with the mask, was that man there as the controller of all these people?
Was the man with the mask the controller of all these people? What do you think?
Let's answer questions with questions.
No? Do you have an opinion?
Yeah.
Yes? That you think that he was the controller?
Yes.
Well, again, there's nothing other than what you saw that really answers that question. But, I mean, you can quite easily infer that, yeah, he's obviously part of the whole thing. If he's coming in there, feeding them, he's wearing a gas mask, so he obviously needs to survive the gas.
He can see what's going on.
He can obviously see what's going on. Oh, actually, that's not even true, because he knows that once the gas comes in, they're going to be unconscious. Maybe he can't even see in the room. We don't actually know the answer to that.
No.
But he's definitely part of whoever is responsible for the situation.
Next question.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that scene where is it Mitch that gets killed?
Yep.
Was there any direction in relation to stopping Matt? Was it Matt that was killing him? Stopping Matt from killing him? Because that went on a long time, that killing scene. And I thought
That was written. That was written.
Some people might have been shocked into inaction, that other people might have, been so horrified that they would maybe try to prevent him from continuing on with the bludgeoning.
Yeah. No, that was written into the script. The script more or less says in point form what happens. So Mitch gets up, looks around, finds the jug of water, climbs on top of Sandra, starts to take her off. She wakes up and starts screaming. Matt wakes up, goes over there and beats him to death with the jug. That's pretty much what it says in the script.
And it was a fairly sort of extended scene, and I just wonder whether some of the characters might have wanted to try and stop it because it was so horrific. But most of them seemed to be sort of shocked rather than horrifying. They were sort of shocked into inaction.
Yeah.
But they were all, I would have thought that with such a variety of personalities, moral codes, etc., that maybe one or two might have, eventually sort of did something to try and stop it. But they all were kind of frozen until it kind of ended.
I think speaking as a director, the thing that we were looking at in that scene was the fact that it's been 6 months, they've gone so far into this world of fantasy that what is fantasy, what is real, and this is one of the very first real things that has happened to them in a very long time,
and
so they don't necessarily know how to respond to
and it's quite possible that people's moral codes could actually alter in such a weird sort of situation like that as well over time.
Questions? Yes?
I was reminded a bit of like World War II concentration type situations at a couple of levels. Just where people in those situations often just had their own plays and orchestral groups singing and that sort of thing. So it sort of rang
Matt.
true that way. Plus, I saw also perhaps reminded that old book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He was an Austrian psychiatrist in one of the concentration camps. That book was just saying the ultimate freedom, and perhaps the only freedom that you have left to you in that situation, is what you can create in your mind and your heart.
Yeah, and that's certainly what the characters in the play did. They created their own situation out of the situation that they were in. And I do reference that concept of what happened in concentration camps. Matt has some lines about that to Judy. Matt, the actor playing the character of Matt would probably know those lines off by heart.
In concentration camps, the prisoners would try to sing or try to write poetry or some art on the sly, or they'd sing songs or tell each other stories. Creativity is what kept some of them alive.
Very good.
Next question.
Did you have another one, David?
No, I was going to ask the same question as the gentleman here about the
okay.
killing of the convict, and whether that, to me, almost seemed a bit out of character. But I can see the point about the not recognising what the director said about not recognising reality at the time, what a new reality.
And as Alison said, it was the first real thing that had happened in that room, probably since they arrived. The dynamic was completely shaken up. They've seen this guy who Matt straight away disliked. The first thing he did was intimidate his wife, more or less threaten all of his friends, is about to sexually assault another person, and his reaction was just extreme. His reaction was going back to reality for the first time in so long was just like, we can't have this here. He makes a comment, oh, this guy's going to stuff up our feng shui. He makes that, it's a light-hearted comment, but that's really what he's thinking. He's thinking, I don't want this person here, I don't like it. It's just changing what I know now as the world.
I was reminded of Big Brother where they chuck in someone new.
And it's usually that new person that gets booted off straight away.
Yes, unfortunately, the producers of Big Brother haven't used that technique to get people.
Give it time.
Give it time.
And just out of curiosity, I'm wondering if any of the actors who are here are interested in asking a question.
Why do you wait?
On the spot.
My questions will go unanswered.
Because what do you think?
I think I'm told.
Why take away one of the characters? We were really involved with them, and then suddenly.
Poor Abby.
Yeah.
What happened to Abby, Pete?
What do you reckon happened to Abby?
Oh, just answer a question, don't ask us.
I've already answered that question with vagueness. What happened to Abby? Well, again, you just have to think about the situation and imagine what would happen with Abby. They couldn't let her go because she knew Matt from before being in the room. As much as you could argue, well, she's just been imprisoned and no one's going to believe her story. Who would believe that story? It's incredibly far-fetched. The fact is that she knew Matt, and Matt was a personality, an online personality, and she knew a lot of personal things about Matt, things that could be verified.
Well, also, my husband and son would have gone to the police.
Yeah.
So there'll be massive manhunts happening out there. She
Yeah,
can't turn up and say
and
she
true.
knows Sandra.
She knows the name of Sandra's husband, Jonathan Carlson's James. Or Jonathan, no, what is
Jonathan.
it? It doesn't matter. Yeah, so you couldn't really let her go because, well, you know.
You know, that is all of that, of course, only if that was the first incarnation of that person in that room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they put her in another room with more people. Maybe they were just letting her give birth and then they were going to chuck her back in there. Or
Guess you can have the baby in the room.
Room
That'd be a
baby.
bit hard. That's the sequel.
Why did you say, Judy, you've been through this before?
That's a device. That's a writing device. The idea that when they say to Judy, you've seen this work with your own eyes. The idea that if they destroy Matt's persona of Gary Blaine, that he's going to be able to wake up and not have any memories of that. It's a little far-fetched. I'm fully aware of that. But it's a device used to imply that perhaps they've been in that room longer than what we've seen, so that the start of the play is not the start of the situation. When they first wake up, maybe something like that had just happened and they were doing it again.
Maybe it wasn't really Matt. Maybe one of the other characters had changed their name.
Maybe one of the other characters. Also, 6 months had gone by in between Act 1 and Act 2. So we have no idea what might have happened there. Maybe it was just a small thing that they'd helped forget. Maybe something, you know, I don't know, some little personal conflict that got a little bit out of hand, and maybe they thought, okay, we've got to deal with this somehow. Maybe that was their mechanism. The fact is that Matt's character he's such a fantasizer anyway, that he's always playing his little games. He spends his life making his silly videos and going online and being characters. So it was already ingrained in his personality that he could become different people if he needed to. And so he's gone through such an extreme trauma that he's managed to find a way of forgetting all about it. We know that deep down he knows that all of that happened, but there's some way that they've found of helping him pretend at the very least, if not genuinely forget about it. He can at least pretend it never happened.
We found...
Yeah, sorry, Louise, and then Brendan had his hand up, and then I've got time for about 2 more questions after that.
We found when we were rehearsing it that one line, you've seen it happen before with your own eyes, Judy, that's the only line that it's breaking that code that they have where it's actually acknowledged. Because it could just be that, you know, it's gone from the one situation to the first reboot without that line. That line is, we all have to acknowledge it in some way, and it changes the whole tone of the play, just that one line.
Yeah, that one line is a very crucial line, and it was a big decision to put something like that in there, because I mean, as a writing device, you could say, oh well, that's just too easy. He's just thrown that in there just to open up all these possibilities and ask these questions. So I did think long and hard about including it, but I did want to give that endless feel to the situation, because there's no resolution. There's no resolution to what actually happens. We never have those questions that they're all asking in the first act. They never get answered. So the play had to finish somehow, and I spent a lot of time. The biggest challenge for me in writing that play was coming up with something that was an ending, not a resolution, but an ending, which wasn't answering all those questions, so that people would walk out of here and at least feel like the play ended and wasn't just cut off.
I would like to say that you might look at it as a writer as saying that's an easy thing to put in there for the actors and for myself.
Yeah,
was that your same thing, Brendan?
I was going to ask that, make that comment as well, but I was also wondering if you were planning to write a sequel.
Room 2 type of room.
Yeah.
I don't know. Writing a sequel would be basically like rewriting the play. The movie. I thought the movie Cube, it was a bit B grade and schlocky. If anyone's seen it, they'd agree. But I thought it was a groundbreaking idea. The way that they did that was really original, and for me, it had me from the very first 5 seconds. As soon as that movie started, I was in it, right until the very end. They made 2 sequels. The first sequel was absolutely horrible. It was Hypercube, where they were going through time and really weird stuff was happening, like there were copies of themselves appearing in other rooms. The second sequel was called Cube Zero, and that was about the control room. So it was about 2 people who actually controlled the cube. So I would never write room 2 and another situation in a room. I like the idea of a different part of that whole story. So what's it like for the people controlling the room, telling more about the guy in the gas mask. But basically, I don't think so. I don't think I'd ever write that. Unless someone pays me to do it.
Questions? Yeah?
I'm very out of touch with drama and the theatre world, but I'm just wondering what your influences have been from that world, and the only thing that comes vaguely to my mind I saw many years ago is perhaps Waiting for Godot, for instance.
Yeah. I've mentioned that myself. I mean, funnily enough, I'm not a very big theatre person. I don't know many plays. I don't know Shakespeare. I don't really know the classics. I'm just, my writing background is as a novelist. I've written 5 novels, and that's where I started before I really wrote any plays. And I got into theatre because I just found there are so many more opportunities in theatre. And it's really easy, especially with short works, to get a short play up on stage. So I kind of came from a different angle and not coming from someone who's classically trained. And it gets a bit embarrassing when people ask me, see, look, I can't even think of a single playwright. Arthur Miller, it's like... if someone says, what's your favourite Arthur Miller play? I'm like, he wrote The Crucible, right? Yeah, definitely that one. That was great.
That's fantastic.
So sorry, I've talked myself into a tangent. What was the question? What are my influences? Yeah, my influences are not definitely nothing in theatre. I mean, theatre for me,
So
I
you
think...
draw from film, novels...
I mean, I took, basically the premise I took from Cube.
Yeah.
I like the premise of putting people together in a situation they can't get out of and what could happen. But no, there are certainly no other writers or anything like that who influenced me. I mean, my personal idea is that I think theatre is just a medium. You don't have to be someone who's interested in writers or actors or directors or the history of theatre to use that as a medium for writing. I'm coming in from an outsider's angle, I guess, as a writer, and just coming in thinking now, okay, this is a different writing medium to writing a book. What can I do with it? So I don't really, I might end up writing some stuff that's very similar to other stuff that's out there because I just don't know, but I'm just trying to do something interesting with a different medium. Mike?
I spoke to Pete earlier on and he said something interesting that, that the audience last night was quite different to the audience today, and I'm just wondering if anybody's got any ideas why this play would elicit, you know, these sort of divergent sort of reactions from the audiences.
We've just been out to lunch.
A couple of wines before I sat in and watched it. Yeah.
It's Sunday, we're all relaxed.
Yeah, those guys sucked last night.
Thank you.
The audience.
I think the acting was more relaxed tonight, so the actors listened to each other more. I really think that was the case. You really listened to each other.
We went on the first night.
Whereas the first ones were really more spitting the lines out.
Yeah, they certainly,
I think they were more relaxed in what they were doing.
We had 2 preview shows so that we could, I mean, you know, I think everyone knows what the point of a preview is. The whole ensemble is just getting better with every show and they're feeding off each other. I think personally, and this is just my opinion, I think the fact that we had such a warm, friendly, engaged and laughing audience, and thank you very much, you guys were awesome, like really. That made a huge difference for me as the writer sitting watching it. I'm sure the actors would agree, having such a great audience in there, responding to what they were doing. It really helped. I think there's a tendency as an actor, and I'm just making this up because I'm not an actor. I think there's a tendency, and you guys can just say you're full of shit, Pete, if you want to. No, I think there's a tendency that if you're performing and you're not getting a response from the audience, but you might want a response. I know that a lot of actors they want to know what the audience is thinking, and particularly with comedy, if people aren't laughing at your jokes, you think, oh, why aren't these people laughing? What can I do to make them laugh? And sometimes what can happen is that you have a quiet audience and it's not working, so you try to be bigger, and then the performance dynamic completely changes, and sometimes that can work against the performance.
But are you so absorbed in the role that you're not aware of the audience? Are you still aware of the audience?
Oh, it's about 80-20. Like, you're still aware, like, 80% absorbed.
No,
well, you like me, so anyway.
It depends on the actor, actually.
It does.
Okay.
But I think, well, for me anyway, like, you can, if the audience is responding, then as a performer, you're completely more relaxed and you're able to feed off them. And Alison's, one of her constant notes is just, you know, just feel the audience and just judge the mood and stuff. And especially with, you know, the jokes, because I mean, my character's got a lot of jokes, a lot of quips and stuff. So, you know, you want to nail them, but you don't want to go, but I'm cheating, here's the joke, here's the punchline, kids.
And no one laughs, so now you're standing there going...
Yeah. Except the moments where it's like...
I've been told that we're going to be out of here by 6. It's nearly 6, I believe. So I'm going to cut it there. But for those of you who have not bought Pete's book, please buy it. And he'll happily sign it for you. I'm sure if you've got more questions for him, he'll happily answer them either in the
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks
very much for coming, guys. I appreciate it, and if you enjoyed the show, please tell people about it. I mean, the biggest challenge that we have as theatre makers is getting people to come along. I think we put on a pretty great show tonight. I know I wrote it, so obviously I like the script, but I think it's a full package. I think it's a great performance, and it's just a shame to have empty seats. So if you liked it, please tell your friends. That's the best thing you can do to thank us.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
I heard you whispering as your story came my way.